Noel Murray of The Dissolve says this movie is agreeably goofy and it feels like something anyone could do, even if that's not the case. David Nusser of Real Film Reviews says it's about as good as it gets when it comes to silly comedies. And Letterboxd user Bracky Wacky says this film is still literally 100% perfect, and if you disagree, then fuck you. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of UHF.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters, it is time for Ruined Childhoods. Greetings, Starfighters, what will we talk about today?
Is that a Dan original song parody?
That is in the style of
in the style
Weird Al Yankovic, as a tribute to the style of Weird Al Yankovic, which we are celebrating on this episode of Ruined Childhoods.
Wow, how does one give tribute to the style of somebody who gives tribute to the style of so many other artists? That's a real brain twister.
You make a podcast where you talk about how much you've loved his movie for over 30 years.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I know that you have a one more thing for Flash Gordon, but before we get to that, first of all, welcome everybody.
Yes.
Second of all, this is our second attempt at this.
Well, you could say third or fourth.
Third or fourth attempt. We were having a lot of technical difficulties while we were recording. Well, we kept on having to push back the recording date for a bunch of reasons. And we were just like, all right, Monday night, we are recording it and getting it right out. And then nature decided to play a role in everything. And it was here in the Pacific Northwest, well into the 100 degree and above mark. You are in Seattle. I am in Portland. Here it was 115 degrees. And
nature or Clytus, I'm bored. Did Ming the Merciless have a heat wave button on his jukebox of plagues and disasters?
Wow, that's totally blowing my mind right now.
Really, anyway, the timing could not have been better.
We were about halfway through our recording session, and my power went out. And we figured then rather than trying to recapture the magic, we'd come in with a fresh magic. And you know what? It's early in the day. It's 11 a.m. I have coffee instead of a more evening beverage, which for me is like a sparkling water, and
a White Claw.
Yeah, so we're coming at it with a fresh energy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's Tuesday, June 29th. Yeah, it's the morning, 11 a.m.
And I have to also apologize if there are any noises that one might hear. On the other side of the wall from where I am right now, which includes windows, there are some guys who are building a fence. So that's I'm looking at them right now. They're doing a great job. But if there's any errant construction noises, that's what's happening.
I love how you said it includes Windows, like it's a laptop you're buying in 1995, and where it says includes Windows 95.
Includes Windows. No, my wall includes Windows.
No, yes. Well, what if it's one of those fancy computer walls from the future in sci-fi?
Oh, the future.
Yeah, the future.
Okay. Dan, did you have a one more thing for Flash Gordon, or was that your one more thing? Is that Ming the Merciless was being merciless?
No, that was a bonus. So my one more thing was a note. So when we talked about Flash Gordon, we had talked about a remake, and we had talked a lot about the style of the original Flash Gordon, something which I think works to its benefit. And I'm going to suggest something that I don't think I've ever suggested before and will probably
Okay.
not suggest again. And I did mean to include this last week. And then I saw it in my notes. I was like, I can't believe, I was like, this is the one and only time that I've ever and possibly will ever suggest a shot-by-shot remake.
Oh, okay.
A Gus Van Sant Psycho,
Right.
but like a shot-by-shot remake of Flash
But then
Gordon.
if it's truly a Gus Van Sant style shot by shot remake, will it include a shot of Dr. Zarkov jerking off? Because that's the one thing that is different about the Gus Van Sant
No, Clytus.
Psycho. Clytus?
It's Clytus. Yeah, no, he's in front of his shrine to Ming, and
Yeah.
and yeah, and you know what's
Sparks are flying all over the
I
place.
forgot Melanie Anderson's character is looking through the
Dale?
Dale. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. For some reason, I almost
Wow.
said Dale Earnhardt. And
Can't believe I remembered her name.
yeah. No, I remember Melody Anderson. I remember the
Okay.
name of the actress, but it's hard for me to remember. I always want to call her Lois
Oh.
because
okay.
I feel like there's kind of it's a
the
Lois.
Lois Lane equality.
Yeah, I mean, which also like Flash Gordon came out just a couple of years after Superman the movie, so
Right.
not unintentional. I'm sure. So, but that was my one more thing. I felt it was. I wanted to bring that back because that was when I think about the original Flash Gordon. I think about, well, why wouldn't you remake it, or like not like literally actually why? What are reasons to not remake it?
Right.
And it's like part of what makes it special is that style that was brought to it, and a lot of the
Yeah.
you know the cinematography and direction. So shot by shot remake of
Okay.
Flash Gordon.
You know, just because we're talking about it, I may as well also suggest a like a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade float. That'd be fun.
Oh wow, I don't think
Or
that
a balloon.
I don't think that's
balloon.
ever come up in our suggestions. How do we?
Yeah, well, guess what? We're breaking all the rules.
We're gonna reinflate this property.
Oh, hello.
Okay.
So because we told you that we already started to record this one, we are learning from our, not mistakes, but our cadence and our tendencies. And instead, this time we are going to start with the synopsis, and then we are going to gush about how much we love Weird Al Yankovic.
and some other cast members in this movie who we will also gush about. But please, before
Absolutely.
the gushing begins, synopsize.
George Newman has a big heart and even bigger imagination, but he can't seem to keep a steady job. But when his uncle wins a deed to U62, a local UHF television station, George is hired to manage, along with his best friend Bob. The station, which typically airs old reruns, is a perfect opportunity for George to explore his imagination with new live shows, such as Town Talk and Uncle Nazi's Clubhouse, in which George and Bob entertain little kids on a shoestring budget. Wanting so badly for the station to succeed, George becomes disheartened when he learns that money is quickly running out. His neglect of his personal life takes a hit, and his girlfriend Terry leaves him. Feeling shattered, George walks off the set of a particularly dismal episode of Uncle Nutsy to go get a drink with Bob, leaving his doofy janitor, Stanley Spadowski, to take over. At the bar, George laments to Bob about his worthlessness when they are both surprised to see that the bar TV isn't only set to U62, but the entire bar has their eyes glued to the screen as Stanley shines on. A little more about Stanley. He used to be the janitor at local network affiliate Channel 8, run by the nasty old R.J. Fletcher. R.J. fired Stanley because he mistakenly suspects that Stanley threw out some reports. Left with no job and no favorite mop, Stanley runs into George, who offers him a job at U62. Back at the show, Stanley gives a big speech about his new mop that George gave him and how life is like a mop. The crowd goes wild, and George and Bob couldn't be more excited. They continue to expand their original programming and they're selling ads like crazy until they ultimately find out that they're number one in the ratings. This doesn't sit well with RJ Fletcher over at Channel 8. RJ calls over to U62's owner, Harvey Bilchik, George's uncle, and offers to buy the station from him. Luckily for RJ, Harvey got a call from Big Louie, his ominous bookie, and finds out that he owes $75,000. When George's Aunt Esther finds out, she forces Harvey to give George a chance to make the money instead. In order to make that much, U62 holds a telethon with Stanley hosting, offering U62 shares at $1 a pop, giving the community an opportunity to co-own the station that they all love. But RJ's goons kidnap Stanley in an effort to get the telethon to fail. This is where I will introduce you, our Ruined Childhood's audience, to Philo, U62's resident science guy. He runs the station's broadcasts, hosts a science show, and is generally a weirdo. In order to keep a close eye on U62, he sets up a hidden camera in RJ Fletcher's office. Thanks to that camera, he sees Stanley fighting off RJ's goons. Philo tells George immediately and he bolts over to Channel 8 to rescue Stanley. Unfortunately, George's plan is poorly thought out and he and Stanley are both outmatched. Luckily, Cooney, George's friend and host of U62's Wheel of Fish, saves the day with some of his karate class students. They rush back to the station, but RJ literally pulls the plug on the entire operation. As he verbally shits all over the U62 fans, George has seconds to spare as Big Louie rolls up in his limo. A local peddler who makes appearances throughout the movie hands George a stack of cash, just enough money to cover the rest of the $75,000. George gives all of the money to Big Louie and the station officially belongs to the community. RJ is publicly humiliated. George gives Stanley a trophy to show his appreciation, and Terry gets back together with George. So, Weird Al plays George Newman. We will get into, as I said earlier, our immense love and appreciation for Weird Al very soon. David Bowe plays Bob. Fran Drescher makes an early career appearance as Pamela Finkelstein, the incredible journalist who was U62's receptionist until George comes in and throws her a bone. What's up, Dan?
Oh, early career, but also just want to kind of shout out Fran Drescher in her, I don't know if it was her first film performance, but another classic comedy that Fran Drescher played a decent supporting role in. This is Spinal Tap, 5 years prior to
Bobby
UHF.
Fleckman.
Yep, Bobby Fleckman. Yep.
Oh, she's so good. Michael Richards, another pretty early in his career performance. We've already talked about him in our Transwing at 65000 episode, but this was just as he was breaking out as in his career defining role as Cosmo Kramer.
Yeah, Seinfeld premiered like 3 weeks before UHF opened.
Absolutely incredible. And he's so good. He's so good in this. He has this like set of false teeth that just makes him look even doofier than he normally does. And, you know, he's just like, everybody knows him for his crazy physical comedy. And, man, he just is so good.
We'll come back to it, but I would say of all of the Michael Richards performances, this is probably the one that I would say has the most acting versus performing.
Yeah, Transmitting at 65000, he was just like a local weirdo, pretty much.
Yeah.
And in this one, he's got stuff to do. He just really shines. And if anybody has an opportunity to watch a copy of this movie with the commentary by Weird Al and the director Jay Levy, there are some appearances by Michael Richards, who does have a lot of fondness for this role and this stage in his career, and it's fun to listen to. Another person who shows up on that commentary is Emo Phillips, who makes an appearance as Joe Early, a high school shop teacher who is on an episode of Town Talk.
Hello and welcome to Town Talk. I'm George Newman, and today our special guest is local high school shop teacher Joe Early. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, homeboy. Well, I see you've brought some equipment with you today. Would you mind giving us a little demonstration?
Not at all. There's only a few simple principles you must bear in mind before attempting to operate a sophisticated piece of machinery like this
Table saw.
It gives him this look of just like, ugh.
It's Mr.
Aren't you
Smarty
Mr.
Pants.
Big Shot.
You know, lots of times when my students
Slices his thumb off. Blood is squirting everywhere.
Do you believe this? Oh, will you look at that? Oh, just call me Mr. Butterfingers. I think it's on the floor somewhere. Oh, is my face red?
He's so good.
Brilliant.
I love it. We have Anthony Geary as Philo, Billy Barty, the incredible Billy Barty as Noodles McIntosh, the cameraman who does the news. So good. One thing that I really appreciate about this movie is that, okay, Billy Barty is a little person.
Yep. One of the
But it's
original Munchkins from The Wizard of Oz.
One of the original Munchkins, responsible for the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. Just an incredible person. But this movie treats him with a lot of respect and does not play his size for comedy in a way that's offensive.
No, the comedy
There's moments.
The comedy is
Yeah.
very much on his side. The comedy is very
Yes.
much on the side of the character.
Absolutely. Love Noodles McIntosh. Actually, why don't I play our introduction?
Introduction?
Whatever, man.
No, George, I can't delay the broadcast because the mayor is supposed to be coming out any minute. Where is he? No, I've looked all over. I don't see a Noodles McIntyre.
Macintosh. At your service.
He's so good.
I love the little fanfare. I mean,
Absolutely.
Sorry, no pun intended.
Yeah. He's wonderful. We have Getty Watanabe as Cooney.
Yeah.
We have, Dr. Demento makes an appearance. And Kevin McCarthy plays RJ Fletcher, who we talked about in our Inner Space episode. Just the best villain, like 80s villain.
Yep,
Just
that corporate,
Yeah.
like representing the big money, like in Inner Space and in UHF.
Yeah, and just to give a little taste of that, I'm going to play the first moment when George meets RJ. So what happens is a package is mistakenly delivered to U62, and George decides to hand deliver it just to get to know, like, have like the friendly competition and just to be a nice guy.
Betty home, I called.
Yes, Mr. Fletcher.
Hey, RJ! Hi, George Newman, U62. Say, nice place you got here. You know, I was just thinking, since we're both in the business...
Where'd you get this? Do you realize that stealing mail is a federal offense?
Hold on, you don't understand.
No, you don't understand how serious a crime this is. I think you just better clear out your desk and get out. You're through, mister.
But I don't work here.
Trespassing, huh? Well, you've got 10 seconds to get out before I call the police.
Look, I just thought we could maybe...
5, 4, 3...
Gee, look at the time. Well, gotta go. Keep in touch.
Ugh. They both
Right.
play off each other so well.
Well, and that's right after, not long after he fires Stanley, and then George meets Stanley. But another character who we meet in that scene, and this is, there's also Victoria Jackson in the cast, and so there
Right.
she's acknowledged. And
For better or for worse.
Yep, there.
No, she's great in this. She's
Saturday
great in
Night
this.
Live alum Victoria Jackson.
This is before she went just like completely off the rails.
Yeah, you know. But what prompted us to finally do this episode, because this is one of those movies that I think John and I could just talk about whenever. And not that we need to re-watch it to be able to talk about it, but of course we both did. And,
I watched it first straight, and then I watched it again with commentary.
Okay, straight, no chaser. And then, okay.
Yeah.
But what prompted us to say, this is the time we're doing UHF.
It's time.
The unfortunate passing of John Paragon, who plays R.J. Fletcher's son, Richard, in UHF. You would also know him as Jambi from Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yeah.
The voice of a familiar, if not a familiar name, definitely a familiar face, and certainly a familiar voice.
Yeah, and John Paragon, the way that he plays Richard in this movie is very much like, he's still like daddy's little boy in his mind. His dad doesn't give a shit about him. He's
kind of like how I imagine. He's kind of like Donald Trump Jr. Like minus the cocaine.
Well, I don't know. This is a clip from when he comes in to tell RJ about the telethon.
Hey, Dad, you better turn on channel 62. Something funny's going on.
I love it.
But that's totally him like, hey, Dad, you better turn on Rachel Maddow.
Yeah.
Something
funny.
They're talking indictments. I could, yeah. So anyway,
Rest in power, pour one out.
Yeah, definitely pour one out for John Paragon, who I did have the opportunity to meet outside.
Right.
The Pee-wee's the Pee Wee Herman show on Broadway. So I was starstruck.
Oh yeah. I unfortunately did not have the opportunity to see that show. I really wish I could have. And I
thought you had seen it. I thought you saw it in LA.
I had not seen it. No, I don't know why I didn't, but I did not make it to that show.
All this time in my files of beliefs, things that I've believed to be true. I need
Your
to
files of beliefs.
Do
you have a filing cabinet that just says beliefs?
Yeah, no, beliefs about myself, beliefs about the world, beliefs about other people. So now I need to go into the John file, and I need to amend that belief. So say John did not see the Pee Wee Herman stage show.
No, but if we're talking about brushes with people that are in UHF.
Yes.
I did sit behind Emo Phillips at a show at the IO Improv Theater in LA, which I don't know if it exists anymore. And I was very starstruck at that moment because Emo Phillips is kind of like frozen in time. It's just always very much Emo Phillips. And I did, I was in... outside of the UCB theater in LA on Franklin, Weird Al was hanging out there because he was in a little show that I saw there. I think that it was an improv show that was kind of like based on people's like weird early career moments.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he showed a video from when he was touring with maybe Fat or something, and it was like on a Japanese television. No, it was Eat It. It was on a Japanese television show, and he didn't know what was going on, and there were just people on the show as they were playing, just like eating crazy things. It was very, very weird, and he had no idea like what was going on. He just was like, I don't know. It's just like his career just like took off, and all of a sudden he's playing on a Japanese television show. And, it's like, a quick rise to fame for Weird Al, which is well-deserved. And he amazingly came out on the other side of it extremely well adjusted and is known to be just like one of the nicest people in entertainment. And you just believe it.
Well, first of all, I have to wonder if his experience on that show inspired any of what we see in UHF, whether it's the Stanley Spadowski Clubhouse or Cooney's Wheel of Fish. I wonder if any of that was in there, but no. So actually, a little bit that I've learned about Weird Al is he's a fairly religious Christian, and like,
oh, is he? I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
and I don't know how else to say this, but like in the good way, like actually, like right. Actually following the
sure.
the word, and he doesn't swear, doesn't drink. Doesn't use drugs.
I know he's a vegetarian.
He's a vegetarian. He's been quoted as saying like he tries to be vegan, but he slips.
Right.
So, but yeah. So Weird Al just.
This is of course post Twinkie Wiener sandwiches.
Yeah, of course. Well, I don't. Does he actually take a bite out of it? Or does Bob?
He does.
Yeah,
he talks
does.
about it on the commentary track
Yeah.
about how many of those he had to eat that day.
Yeah.
And he said that this was before he became a vegetarian.
Yeah. So I think it was from his I think his wife when they met. I think kind of inspired him. But anyway, so Weird Al just kind of reputed to be one of the most genuinely nice people in show business, and actually
he
John
he just loves comedy. Like he just loves to be he
loves entertainment.
Yeah,
he loves
absolutely.
He's so into everything. But before we move on, as we're talking about personal connections,
it's so easy for us to get into
it is, but I didn't want to miss, because we're talking about personal connections to the film, and I don't think you've acknowledged your closest personal connection to a person in UHF, because
so that's right. So I went to a summer camp, a performing arts summer camp, and one of the counselors there, of course this person is going to be a few years older than I am, was Jeff Maynard, who might not sound familiar to most, but he is the kid with the library books that are overdue in the Conan the Librarian segment of UHF, who gets sliced in half by an Arnold impersonator playing Conan.
Yeah, not
Conan.
Weird Al.
Not Weird Al. And just brilliant. So it was quite a moment when it was like, oh my God, it's the guy from UHF. And it's like, yeah.
He's got that's a memorable featured moment in the film.
And I will also say this. I can't say for sure how it went down, but in the commentary track for UHF, Weird Al did his homework. He came prepared, and he had the name of every small character, like every actor who came and made an appearance in that movie. He mentioned every single person by name. He gave the exact addresses for the filming locations.
Oh, in Tulsa, right?
Everything in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. That's right. And and it's like, I'm sure he had them written down, but like to do that really shows appreciation for everything that went into making this movie. A lot of commentary tracks, it'll be people just talking about their personal experience, like just how they viewed things. But he talks about every single aspect of this movie with high regard.
And it just speaks to that genuineness of Weird Al. And because honestly, it takes being genuine to be weird.
Yeah.
And not to mention to put it out there and advertise it and make a career
right
out of it. Damn, he's been his first album came out in 1983, but I think the first single got played on Dr. Demento in 76.
Was that Another One Rides the Bus?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Another One Rides the Bus, which that might have been the one. It's either that or My Bologna, that was recorded in a dormitory bathroom.
You know, I have like the Weird Al coffee table book signed. I don't know did you get that for me? Did Scott get that? Somebody got that for me. Had it signed for me, which was, no. My good buddy Eric Goslin, previous guest on the show, he had gotten that for me because Weird Al was a guest on a show that he was producing. And yeah.
That's awesome.
So it's not, I have another Weird Al autograph that was not directed specifically to me. I was at Amoeba Music in LA and I found a copy of Even Worse that was just in the used records that was signed to somebody named Angel, and I have that one framed. So if anyone asks, call me Angel. But,
in the morning or
in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool. When you find a signed Weird Al record in the used record
it's so
bin.
cool when that happens. The one time it happens that it happened to you.
It happened?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know. So hey, if you've ever found a signed copy of a Weird Al album in a record store, in a used record store, in a used bin, shoot us an email, ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com, and let us know where you found it. Let's give them a shout out. Record Store Day is coming up, and maybe this will send people, go to the shelves, hit the shelves, look for your signed Weird Al.
Okay, I'm going to take it a step further. If you can prove to us that you have a signed Weird Al record that you found in a used record bin, we will send you some Ruined Childhoods merch. How about that?
Oh, yeah.
But you have to be able to prove that it's not that it's not specifically for you.
We need to see receipts. It can't be specifically for you.
We need a picture of you in the used record bin.
Yeah.
Rummaging.
Uh-huh.
So
Absolutely.
Anyway,
sorry, we were talking about UHF, weren't we?
Yeah. So the thing is, this movie was written by Weird Al and Jay Levy, who's Weird Al's manager. And it was just it's a movie that's written with the idea of it's a pretty standard plot that's designed to kind of house what Weird Al is most known for, which is parodies of things. So you have parodies of commercials, parodies of TV shows like Geraldo, and you have
movie parodies.
You have movie parodies. Gone with the Wind.
Conan the Librarian.
Right.
I mean, the movie opens,
but you also have a song parody with the Money for Nothing Beverly Hillbillies.
Which,
song,
by the way,
video.
fits perfectly into the movie and fits into the plot because he falls asleep while he's working at the station. He misses his dinner with Terry and her parents. And it really shows you the inner workings. This is how this guy's mind works, is he takes different aspects of pop culture and puts them together and makes it work together, which is, how George Newman's mind works. And I imagine how Weird Al's mind works, because you've got you've got the Gandhi 2 parody with the Shaft music,
which is Jay Levy as Gandhi.
Right. Yeah. And the movie opens, and not actually, so it opens with the Raiders of the Lost Ark parody.
Indeed it does.
And
stealing the statue. Yeah.
So many gags right in the beginning. And which is interesting because this movie opened about 2 months after Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah. So,
a lot of, just playing on that, I imagine. And
what I love about this movie, well, one of the things I love about this movie is that it picks up on things that are popular, in that era. Rambo, and it plays with them in a really fun way that's not disrespectful.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind, so Spielberg for 2.
To a bit of a lesser extent, I'd say. Well, that's just kind of a moment that happens. It's not like a full...
Yeah, it's the
dream sequence or anything.
Right. No. It's right. The Rambo sequence is very much a fantasy.
But the Indiana Jones sequence plays. It's the very first thing that we see. It launches you into the movie in a way where you're just like, okay, I know what I'm in store for right now. And it comes out of that sequence where he's daydreaming and he and his buddy Bob are working at a burger joint. And I'm just going to play the clip now. And it's essentially the first lines of the movie if you take out anything that's in the Indiana Jones moment, which is irrelevant to the plot.
George. Hello. Earth to George.
Are you daydreaming again? No, I was just admiring how clean and shiny this grill is.
Come on, George, we're busy here.
You know what the problem is? Nobody here appreciates a guy with a good imagination.
Well, at least not the people at the lumberyard, or the miniature golf course, or Floyd's Fish Market, or any of the other places you worked in the last month, right?
Yeah, well, someday they'll be sorry. They'll be eating breakfast or something, and all of a sudden they'll say, "Hey, we screwed up. We never should have fired George Newman because he's got imagination."
So clearly somebody read like Save the Cat or whatever. And it's just like, how much information can we get into this like first moment? It's like establishing like who this character is, who his friend is, exactly where he is in his life. Got fired from the lumber yard and so on and so forth. Like it sets everything up so well, but in a way that you just accept.
Well, yeah, it's kind of, and it was, I think, less out of place because as I was listening to the list of Floyd's Fish Market and everything,
right, yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm like, well, there's not a franchise or a chain, in sight or that even really exists in this world.
No.
So it's refreshing, and I think that was less out of place in the late 80s than it is now, but it's kind of set in this other, alternate like Weird Al Yankovized universe.
Right. And which is what makes a character like Stanley Spadowski make sense. That somebody like this would exist in this world where it's just like this doofy guy that, I don't know, exists just in his own world. And I love that.
Yeah. No, he's just, he has his passions, his mop.
Yeah, I'm going to play a clip from when George decides to walk off of the set of Uncle Nutsy's Clubhouse and and just has Stanley go on.
I need a drink.
You don't drink.
Yeah, but I've been meaning to start.
Wait a minute. What about the rest of the show?
Watch out, Mr. Coyote! Oh, terrible.
Hey, Stanley,
Yeah, George?
how'd you like your own TV show?
Okay.
You're on.
What are you doing? Are you crazy?
So the entire time he's just like, he's got his mop, but he's just eyes glued to this cartoon. And of course, that leads into this scene where we learn a little bit more about, George, and, described it earlier as like, he's just displaying his worthlessness. But this is where we start to see Stanley really shine.
George, what about...
Bob, it doesn't matter anymore. It's over.
Yeah, we're watching it too. Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. Okay, play later. Gentlemen, what can I get you?
Beer.
Blueberry daiquiri.
Tell you what, George. Let's start fresh. Start a whole new business. Maybe we could borrow some money from your Uncle Harvey.
Oh, right. We just flushed his TV station down the toilet. I'm sure he'd be happy to lend us money.
So I guess Terry's never gonna speak to you again, huh?
Bashes his head on the table.
Yeah, I didn't get an umbrella.
Look, everybody, he's coming back on.
This is like a biker bar, isn't it?
Welcome back to Stanley Spadowski's Clubhouse. Hey, are you kids having a good time? Hey, how about that cartoon? That was a weird cartoon, wasn't it? That cartoon, it reminds me of a dream I had last week, and I turned into a bird with a candy bar head. And then there was these other birds, they're all trying to eat my head and everything, but I got away from them. And then there was this tree, and there was this weird lizard, What the? Whoa!
Pulls a lizard out of his pants.
Whoa! 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 I want to show you something. I want to show you something. This is my new mop. George, my friend, he gave me this mop. It's a pretty good mop. It's not as good as my first mop. I miss my first mop. But this is still a good mop. Sometimes you just have to take what life gives you, because life is like a mop. And sometimes life gets full of dirt and crud and bugs and hairballs and stuff. You gotta clean it out. You gotta put it in here and rinse it off and start all over again. And sometimes life sticks to the floor so bad. A mop is not good enough. It's not good enough. You gotta get down there like with a toothbrush, and you gotta really scrub. You gotta get it off. You gotta really try to get it off. But if that doesn't work, you can't give up. You gotta stand right up. You gotta run to a window and say, "Hey, these floors are dirty as hell, and I'm not gonna take it anymore."
Network. So that's what I'm talking about, man. That's Stanley Spadowski's. That's in the Michael Richards Oscar clip for 1989. He is that's like probably when I think about acting versus performing, that's kind of one of those moments where Michael Richards just really makes a connection to the character, to the situation, and it's kind of one of those times where you get the sense of the character's history and what the character has gone through to get to this point where he's got a new mop and now has this hit TV show.
Yeah, so Michael Richards, I don't know. I think that the first part of that was actually improvised, and then the mop thing I think was all scripted. So I just love it. It's wonderful. And to see George and Bob just like freaking out. Though I mean, I do have a bit of an issue with that scene where it's like, first of all, how are they just watching George's Uncle Nutsy's Clubhouse? Like, they had to have had it on the channel. And then also it's like we George leaves while the cartoon is going on, and it seems like they get to the bar and the cartoon is just ending.
And that's strange because when we see the outside of the building, it's pretty much isolated. So it's not like they just went like next door. Are you saying that are you saying there's a lack of logic?
Well, maybe a little bit, but what I'm saying is Stanley wouldn't have been on screen yet because the cartoon was still the same cartoon, because he refers to the Roadrunner cartoon or whatever. Anyway. Yeah,
I mean, I guess when I watch it, I wonder, I'm like, is it another cartoon? Did they go to a different cartoon? Like, how much of the show, like, how long did it take them? Yeah. So I guess it would help if you're really, if you go and watch UHF and this is a sticking point for you, then what I would say is convince yourself that in the time it took them to go to the bar, and there's a commercial on when they get there, right? Is it a commercial?
Oh yeah, I guess there must have been.
So they get to the bar. Imagine that it takes them enough time that Stanley would have had another segment, because by the time he comes on in the bar, it's like he's been hosting the show for a good 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, and also, clearly the bartender's on the phone with somebody who's making sure that he has it on U62.
Yeah, for some reason I always imagine it's like another bar owner.
Yeah, right? It's like, your bar has to be watching what our bar's watching. Anyway, it's amazing. But so we should talk a little bit about UHF channels to begin with, because this is something that and Weird Al talks about this on the commentary track, but like it was a little odd to be, talking so much about a UHF station during a time, that was 89, cable was a thing and increasing in popularity, and people were not really watching antenna television so much anymore. And UHF channels, which is ultra high frequency, are, just those like non-network stations that come in kind of weird on your TV and, just have, who knows, just reruns of Beverly Hillbillies on it or something.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, like I had, at the time this movie came out, I was 12 or almost, I was 11 going on 12, and had a TV that I had found in the basement of our house. That
You found it?
What?
You just found it?
I mean, yes. Like, do you ever go into that like storeroom where...
Oh, I didn't know that you just like found a TV in there.
So, and for those who might not know, John and I are brothers. So,
Yeah.
So when I refer to like our fathers, I'm actually referring to our father. It's not like a spiritual or religious thing.
Right.
When I talk about like our father's, quote unquote shop room where tools and old National Geographics were kept. So there was a TV. It was I think a 13-inch black and white, and it had a UHF dial on it.
Of course.
And I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, there's this type of programming on a UHF station. Not so much.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing. And, it's similar to, especially on like cable channels or cable programs, there's like local access stations, which, if you're not so familiar with, it's, like where Wayne's World would have been on the local access station. And, we had Channel 35 where we grew up.
TV 35, yeah.
TV 35, where I volunteered. I did... I was a camera operator for like football, like high school football games, and then some weird like in studio shows where.
Did you do Total Sports with Ed Toy?
I think that I did an episode or two of that. It's so long ago. It's so hard to remember.
It's the only like actual show that I can remember being on TV 35. Otherwise, it was just like they were playing, tours of the Historical Society. Unfortunately, not the one you were on, where.
The tour of the Historical Society, where Josiah Crane, founder of Cranford, where Josiah Crane's a proxy was got heat stroke and collapsed on a child.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, TV 35 otherwise they were just like replaying like graduation ceremonies and.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You know what? And it's like, man, I wish that when I was a kid, I had the foresight. I mean, of course, it's easy to think about that kind of stuff now, but it's like, thinking about the people who took advantage of local access television stations at the time, people like Chris Gethard, the Chris Gethard show, getting its start on local access and then just kind of taking off. And, Chris Gethard, very special in his comic sensibilities in his own right. But, really, really launched something with the Chris Gethard show of just like this group of weirdos. And also like people like Jake Fogelnest, who started Squirt TV on like a local access thing. And then it got picked up by MTV. And like he was a kid. He was 13 when that was going on.
It's crazy. And when you were talking about being the camera operator, it made me think of Luby Washington, who plays the camera operator in UHF, who
drinking the entire pot of coffee during the telethon.
Yeah, I mean, pour one out. But he's like, I don't know if he says a word in the movie, but his expressions, his reactions,
fantastic,
adds so much. So shout out to Luby Washington.
And along, just because I mentioned him, Jake Fogelnest, along with Weird Al, both make appearances in the last movie that I saw in a theater, my return to the theaters, the documentary The Sparks Brothers, about the band Sparks, which is fantastic. It's so good. And Weird Al, definitely, in a lot of ways influenced by Sparks, as many musicians were. I think a lot about the way that they would use like old TV sound effects in their songs that, I'm pretty sure like the same like cheesy gunshot that's in This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us is in a polka.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just so much fun. And yeah, it was really great to see Weird Al on the big screen once again.
I know
even if it's just as himself.
Well, it's funny.
He was Edgar Wright, who directed the Sparks Brothers. When it says like the name of the person and then like who they are, for some of them it's pretty funny. Like it's like Beck, see above, and for Weird Al it says accordion player. So
nice.
It's just so great.
I mean, he really is the kind of like most mainstream accordion player. He really made the accordion central to his act, even as his music got, the accordion is all over the first album.
Right.
But yeah, you even hear, like, he's got the polkas on every album. On the UHF soundtrack, it was the Hot Rocks polka, all Rolling Stones songs. Usually the polkas were like whatever was popular, whatever songs were really popular in the couple of years between.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
albums.
A medley of cover songs, of popular songs. And there are so many of them where it's like, I definitely knew those songs from the polkas before I knew the actual songs, or I knew Weird Al's parodies of songs before I actually knew the real songs.
I knew King of Suede years before I ever heard King of Pain.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case for most people in King of Pain.
People who weren't already fans of the, people who were like, kids like us who would have discovered Weird Al before the Police.
It was also a long time before I knew about MacArthur Park, and I just thought Jurassic Park was its own standalone thing.
Oh.
And yeah, it's just like some of these things are a little bit more obscure than others. And I gotta say, like, on his latest albums, I feel like there's some of his best stuff. Word Crimes, his parody of Blurred Lines.
Word Crimes is fantastic, especially for a grammar nerd such as myself.
Yeah,
Word Crimes was
and also
a gift.
at the end of an episode recently, the 3 Days of the Condor played the song "Party in the CIA," which is a parody of Miley Cyrus's "Party in the USA," and they're so good. His parody of Lord's Royals as Foil is so funny and takes a weird dark turn. And he's great. So Weird Al albums, for anybody who somehow is listening to this and it does not know too much about Weird Al's music, the albums are those polkas, the medley songs as polkas, the parodies, original songs, most of which are in the style of another popular artist.
They are pastiche.
Yeah. And he's so good. He's also got a great voice.
Oh, yeah, and a voice that has really been consistent from the beginning of his career to now. But it's actually something that I was thinking about in terms of Weird Al and, his last album, 2014's Mandatory Fun, which I listened to. I didn't listen to the whole thing. And I wonder, I don't know if it's just because, like, I'm older and also not necessarily older, but just like I don't necessarily listen to pop music, but I tend to think that in the 80s and 90s, it was much more of a sure thing that a majority of people would get that. Like you mentioned the Lord's Royals, and I have never, to the best of my knowledge, I have not heard that song. Now, chances are I could hear it and I'd be like, oh, okay, I've heard that somewhere, but I don't know. I haven't heard it. So to enjoy Weird Al's, it's kind of like with the albums from the 80s. So when I started getting into Weird Al around, mid to late 80s before UHF.
Yeah.
There was a mix of songs that I knew, like, all the Michael Jackson stuff. And I think like Eat It was the first. I remember seeing the video for Eat It in our grandparents' basement in Rahway, New Jersey.
Wow.
And because that was the only holidays were the only times, because our dad would not let us watch MTV.
Right. MTV was, still very new and scary.
Yeah, no, it was very scary. Like watching MTV could have, I don't know, gotten us into all sorts of
Weird Al.
Weird Al, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, because actually the first video I ever remember seeing, I think on MTV, was Mickey. Tony Basil, which is kind of a trippy video.
Ricky. Oh no, Mickey,
not Ricky. I saw that one much later on, but and that's another thing. Like he's parodying things like, I Love Lucy, and it's kind of like at that time, even though I Love Lucy had been on the air like 25, 30 years earlier. Right. It was kind of like, if you didn't grow up watching it in its original run, you grew up watching it on like you're homesick from school.
With Beverly Hillbillies.
Same with Beverly Hillbillies. Exactly. So it was something that I thought about with Beverly Hillbillies, and for that matter, Money for Nothing, because it's kind of like, if Weird Al did I'm trying to think of bands that I listen to, like Lord Huron, probably the newest band that I listen to, like Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats. Like if he did one of their songs, how many people would get it?
No. And the thing, he has an appreciation for new trends in music.
Yeah.
And is not afraid to celebrate them, and people like Miley Cyrus or Lorde.
No, to his credit, he stays very current, and his parodies do not mock the singer.
No, I think the only enemy he's ever made might be Coolio.
Oh yeah,
they had beef with Amish Paradise.
Actually, yeah, no, that's true, because Coolio felt that because Gangsta's Paradise was very serious.
Yeah. And also, Prince never gave him permission to do a parody.
So that means we won't actually get a recording of Raspberry Beignets, which, if you follow Weird Al on
tweeted about this
Twitter
morning,
or Instagram, he posted from a bakery window Raspberry Beignets, and his caption was the kind you buy in a secondhand store. And of course, every response to the tweet is a new lyric.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's Weird Al. He is the only person who's allowed to do this. I mean, that's not kind of really true.
But it's kind of like
he's the best at it.
He's the best at it, and it's anybody else doing song parodies, as evidenced by the large number of miscredited. There's a whole website devoted to song parodies that have been miscredited to Weird Al.
Oh yeah,
and like as demonstrated by that, it's kind of like, if you're doing song parodies, you're doing it like there's no way around doing it like Weird Al. I mean, I think there's the Richard Cheese and Dan Band takes on it, where it's Richard Cheese doing the lounge versions, Dan Band just taking songs sung by women and adding profanity. But song parodies, it's kind of like, and why the hell isn't Weird Al in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I mean,
that's a fantastic question.
He has been holding up this industry and celebrating it for almost 40 years. For over 40 years, actually. Yeah.
And also, it's just like comedy music as a genre. Of course, there were people like Dr. Demento who would celebrate those, weird comedic, there's people, of course, like Alan Sherman and stuff like, who would do like funny music.
Fish Heads. That was a song I remember seeing on Dr. Demento.
Totally. Yeah. And then
Julie Brown. Julie Brown was another big Dr. Demento from Earth Girls Are Easy.
Yeah. And then, it's just like Weird Al really just took this genre and elevated it, and now you have a lot of incredible, comic musicians, people like Garfunkel and Oates, or Ali Gertz. There's so many people who are doing comedy music, and it's awesome.
Right.
It's just really fun. And there are people who are, who Weird Al knows and is kind of like signed off on them, essentially.
Oh yeah, well, he's incredibly supportive of others in the industry, and it's not his fault that he has kind of defined it. I mean, I feel like it's almost like Kleenex, where if you're going to talk about a song parody, you'd be like, oh, when are we going to hear the Weird Al version of that?
Right.
Even if it's not going to be Weird Al doing it.
Yeah. So, Dan, you were talking a little bit about how you first more or less became aware of Weird Al with the Eat It video. Do you remember when UHF came out, what your experience was like seeing it?
Yes. So we all went together.
I knew that I saw it in the theater. I could not remember the circumstances.
We saw it with good friend and former guest Jeff Rubin.
Of course, yeah.
His mother Meryl might have stuck around, or maybe she might have gone shopping during. We saw it at the Linden Movie Theater in Linden, New Jersey, the old Linden Movie Theater. And one thing I really remember about this movie theater was that you kind of had to angle your head to see the screen. You kind of had to turn your head a little bit. It's kind of like the seats are facing. It's kind of like when you're watching a movie at someone's house and you get like the last seat, and like you get there late or something, and you're kind of like you're looking off to the side to see the screen.
When they built this theater, they certainly only measured once.
Right. And whether it was whoever installed the seats or installed someone screwed up or someone just didn't care. But I remember, I mean, it obviously didn't affect our enjoyment of the film.
No.
Because here we are talking about it. But I definitely remember seeing it in that movie theater. I'm trying to think of the other movies that I remember seeing in that movie theater were, I'm pretty sure that's where I saw Die Hard 2.
Okay.
Die Harder. And I definitely saw La Bamba there.
Oh, okay.
And I remember at one point, I remember it's one of the only movies that I didn't walk out of it in the sense that like, oh, this is terrible, but I walked out because I did not want to see the plane crash. I thought that we were going to see the plane crash.
Really?
And not just kind of dissolve as the plane is taking off.
Yeah.
So I remember when they got on the plane and the plane took off. And by the way, and I know that this is a bit of a tangent here, but I always wondered why the movie Walk Hard, which I guess somewhat related because it's a parody, why Walk Hard, which spoofs so many of those rock biopics, why they didn't do something where it's Dewey Cox who loses the coin toss.
The coin toss, yeah.
I mean, maybe that would have been a little, question. I guess maybe that might have
maybe a little insensitive.
But
although,
I mean, when did that come out? 2009 or
at the height of insensitivity.
Well, but also like 50 years later.
But yeah.
So anyway, that was one. I mean, like he's making fun of Brian Wilson.
Well, but he's also, there's the whole thing about the brother dying, and isn't that the Ray Charles thing? Or
was that Ray Charles or Johnny Cash? I think it was John. I think that
or both.
That was Johnny Cash, but losing the sense of like was it taste or smell or something?
Smell
pre-COVID, and that was the right. That I think it was. I mean, Ray and Walk the Line were kind of the two big ones for that. And that was also something I loved about Walk Hard was that even though there had not yet been a movie about Brian Wilson, they still included all the Brian Wilson smile stuff. And then of course Love and Mercy comes a few years later. But back to UHF.
Back to UHF and looking forward with UHF, Dan, because this is Ruined Childhoods and we talk about the future for these movies.
Yes.
What would you do with this?
Okay. So lots of lots of possibilities here. What I decided to go with here is a sequel.
Okay.
And so basically the plot is here's the plot for my sequel. And I don't know what you would call it. I know screenwriter Brian Lynch on Twitter mentions 2HF every now and again as his idea. So that could totally work, but I have other ideas. So basically you open it's 1989. We're in it's 1989. It's Tulsa. And you've got a TV addicted 12-year-old, like imagine like a young Frank Cross from Scrooge, who's just like glued to the TV,
right?
Who is taping, got the VCR hooked up, and is just like obsessed with U62.
Okay.
This kid, and I said 12, I think mainly just because that was around my age at that time.
Okay.
But you could go a little bit younger as well, I'm sure. So just recording tape after, just like loving U62 so much, and just VHS tape after VHS tape. Like you see that he's taping over like bar mitzvahs. I mean, maybe not in Tulsa, but or like family reunions and things like that. He's taping over that with like just hours and hours of Stanley Spadowski and all the Wheel of Fish and all that. So you start with that. You start with maybe like the flashback kind of ends with him making a donation, or like taking his dad's credit card or something, and just like maxing it out and like buying U62 shares, which comes back later. So we flash forward, I don't know, 30 odd years, and he or she is grown up, and they run they've got like whether it's a website or a YouTube channel, but that's just like they're streaming U62 videos, or they're like, maybe it's YouTube and they're posting all these old U62 videos, and you see how, you have people talking, leaving comments on the videos and saying like going down rabbit holes, and you kind of can see maybe the montage style about how like all these U62 videos go viral. It makes me think of Winnebago Man as well. So, with people just discovering it online. So now you've got your big media company, not a television affiliate, of course, anymore, but a big media conglomerate, headed up, by, I don't know, maybe someone played by Jeff Goldblum, and
maybe,
and they're starting to like steal ideas, and the now grown up kid sees this, and the only person who can really do anything about it is George. So like the kid is trying to sue, and they're like, yeah, but no, it's not your creative content or whatever. I don't know. As we've already established, logic is not a priority here. Okay, so he has to go off and find George. Now, of course, this wouldn't be a UHF sequel without some parody. So we enter into a kind of take on The Revenant, where the kid like finds George after George has fought a bear with his bare hands or something like that. And I don't know, maybe I was thinking you could like parody Revenant and Grizzly Man at the same time, and like the kid finds them and they're fighting, and then it just turns out to be like the bear is teaching George like mixed martial arts or something, and like they're friends. Whatever. So the kid kind of gets George, and like, yeah, no, they're like seriously stealing all of these ideas. And so they team up, and they're trying to stop big media from stealing their ideas. And so they have to find a lawyer, and unfortunately it's hard for them to find a good lawyer. They get shot down by all of the big attorneys in town. So they turn to an attorney who used to be a big corporate lawyer for big media, and and then got like just worn out and everything. So she's just practicing family law. So you have this lawyer played by Gina Davis, not Susan Sarandon in a take on The Client, but Gina Davis in a take on Reggie Love. So
you're reuniting Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum.
Yes. But what's funny is like, so you kind of meet Gina Davis and she's more of like just the, more of like the Gina Davis of Beetlejuice or like A League of Their Own, the kind of down to earth, or Thelma and Louise, the kind of like down to earth Gina Davis. And then once she gets, and it's hard for her, she doesn't want to, she's like, oh no, I don't want to do anything with big media and I don't want to do that. But then something happens, it clicks, and Charlie Baltimore. She kind of Charlie Baltimore's a little bit, not in a like specific, like if you haven't seen The Long Kiss Goodnight, you won't get it way, but if you have seen The Long Kiss Goodnight, you'll have a little more appreciation for it. So, right. And she goes to fight Jeff, and maybe there's some sort of past connection between her character and Jeff Goldblum's character. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm kind of dreaming. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be great. So, but then of course, their legal funds dry up because the corporate attorneys know what to do. And they know, they're like, we just need to keep those billable hours piling up and they won't be able to pay. So what do they have to do? An old school telethon online. They have to do, it's like they crowdsource, because that's what they were doing in,
right.
Like they did a GoFundMe before it existed. So now they're like, we've done this before and now people actually know what it is. So, and then maybe Philo returns from Zarkon, like maybe George has like one of those, a little like a signaler device, kind of like they give to
Courtney Cox.
Yeah, to Courtney Cox in Masters of the Universe. And
I knew what you were
not
talking
directly spoofing that, but so we're like Philo comes back and I'm imagining this like climaxing in a trial, and that's where you could also have a lot of people bring back a lot of people for cameos. Like I would love to see Fran Drescher come back in this.
Yeah.
I would love to see, imagine that like they have to go find Joe Early and you know what you're going to parody there, where they have to go find Joe Early, who's living in this abandoned old house on a hilltop and has scissors for hands.
Okay.
Or something like that. Like at this point,
wow, Dan, you really thought this one out, huh?
I actually did this before rewatching the movie. I was like, thinking about it, and
not surprising.
And I'm thinking about like, who else, so like, do we bring back, can we bring back Anthony Geary? Should we bring back Michael Richards? And I was thinking, I was like, I don't know who else, but like, does Morgan Freeman play the judge at the end? Like, who do you get to be the judge? I was thinking for some reason, Sam Richardson just feels like he belongs in here.
Okay.
Somewhere. Maybe he's the kid who was the...
I'll never turn down a Sam Richardson role.
No. I was just thinking about him, and I was like, his delivery, his style, at least what I'm familiar with, mostly from Veep, would fit in really well.
I'm looking forward to seeing Werewolves Within.
Yeah. I'm hearing good things. So... so that's the idea. Maybe someone like a Jorma Taccone would be a good filmmaker to do it, or there are probably a lot of great comedy filmmakers out there that I'm not thinking of, and it's a great opportunity to get a new voice, because you're not going to you're marketing this around the fact that it's a sequel to this cult classic comedy, and Weird Al is just beloved. So right. you can find a director who's not necessarily a name director.
Well, I think that is it Akiva Schaffer in The Lonely Island?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting the last name wrong, but he's the one who does the directing, I believe, for the most part.
I thought didn't Jorma do MacGruber?
Akiva Schaffer, let's see. He did. Sorry for all
No,
of this.
I'm pretty
Hot Rod MacGruber. Oh, he was executive producer on MacGruber.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Yorma
Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
like who directed
MacGruber-
those?
Yeah, Yorma directed MacGruber. Right. So, but what's interesting is that, we didn't mention Lonely Island before, but Lonely Island extremely influenced by Weird Al, and so they certainly do a lot of work together, and that's kind of where my mind went as well.
There's another actor who could play Andy Samberg.
Andy Samberg. Yeah.
I would have no problem with that. So John, where were you going with this?
So, I feel like obviously this could be a stage musical. That's not really the territory that I was going to go down, but it's all there. It's all there. It's ready to go. But what I was thinking was actually prequel. I was thinking that I'd love to see an RJ Fletcher story. Really get to the core of why he's so rotten. And I don't know. I feel like this is kind of a well-worn thing, but really love to see, him at the beginning in a movie called Channel 8, and or maybe VHF, because that would be the alternative to UHF.
Ooh.
And it would take place like in the 50s, maybe, seeing RJ Fletcher get his start. Maybe he was somebody with a big imagination, but the money is just in reporting the news and just being a network affiliate.
I'm imagining like a Mad Men spoof.
Yep. Maybe he did have an imagination, but he was forced into doing this whole network affiliate thing. We get the information from UHF that his father was a very serious man. And I'd love to just see kind of what changed, what could have been a change in RJ. Because clearly Richard, RJ's son, is a goofball. And it's like, maybe he was a goofball too. And
What if he had to go the corporate route after getting Richard's mother pregnant? Because we don't see or hear anything about Mama Fletcher.
That's
in
true.
here. So, but what if that was the thing, and he had to do that, and that's why he despises his son so much.
He despises his son, but he also despises, he's just so serious about
anybody
his business.
who's creative.
He despises George.
Yeah.
So lots to explore with that character. I was thinking about all the other characters, and it's just like, sure, it will be interesting to maybe explore Harvey Bilchick's past, or
that brings up an interesting question, though. So I'm wondering, because they're talking about like how Harvey, is doing well at the racetrack, and there seems to be this little implication that maybe there's some type of fix going on that Harvey is in on, like the way that he acts about his good fortune gambling. Like, I'm wondering if is Harvey mobbed up?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the other thought that I had was like, do we want to know more about Big Louie? But then I was like, no, Big Louie is perfect as is. Has a fake detachable hand that can be a meat cleaver.
Is it not? Is it Mr. Igo from Inner Space?
Yeah. Oh my God, the Inner Space connections, spooky.
Love it.
But yeah, I don't know. It's it's the Dr. Claw of it all.
Right.
It's the person who you only see from over the shoulder and behind. You only ever see like their arm, and it should stay that way.
No, I think that works. I like the young RJ Fletcher story. Would it be a comedy?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that it would be like a dark comedy, one that's maybe like played serious. But I mean, maybe it could even be similar to the way that like Walk Hard plays, where, yes, it is a comedy, but there are, funny, dramatic elements to it.
Would it play up? Because if we're doing like TV in the 50s, I'm imagining a very misogynistic world.
Sure.
And racist.
Well, as we learn from this movie, and I hate to quote, what is the, I don't know if the character has a name, but oh my God, I'm looking for the actor's name right now. He's one of the David Preval.
Oh yeah,
who says broads don't belong in
David Preval. How did we not mention him before? David Preval was in like Mean Streets, Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets. He was in The Sopranos for he was Richie Aprile.
Yeah, he's so good in this. When he's got the staples in his face, it's so good.
Oh,
anyway.
Yeah. No, there's a couple of things. Well, and that, I mean, also it's like he is like that character existed, like that type of person definitely exists. So I think for him, I think the trouble is that when you start to have a protagonist behaving that way, like for him, for like like how they torture him and Richard, like, you know, mess with Noodles and they trip him and you know, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there.
Whoopsie.
It's almost okay, because in a movie like this that's so cartoonish, you know these are the bad guys and you know they're going to get what's coming to them.
Yes. And what's so great about this is that they truly get what's coming to them, because it's not like they just win the station and it ends. Like RJ gets kicked in the nuts. The peddler guy who he gives a penny to shows him the Rolex that he bought with the penny that was given to him, which happened to be worth a lot of money.
Oh, and that's
which helped him get the shares for U62.
That's what he's yelling at Richard about a Rolex, about like the watch that he got him. Or he gives him a watch.
I said I wanted a Rolex.
Right. So now not only did he give the
Happy Father's Day, Dad.
Not only does he give the peddler the penny that ends up being worth all of like thousands of dollars so that he can buy the I mean, I don't know if that actor's still around, but I would have to bring him, or like
so that's Vance Colvig Jr. Let's see what we can find out about him. He passed away in 1991 at age 72. I believe that he was actually in a lot of things pretty early on.
I feel like he definitely looks
voice
familiar.
of Yogi Bear, voice of Fred Flint. Well, no, I don't know if he was the voice of Fred Flintstone.
He's got a very familiar look.
Absolutely. He was Chopper on the Yogi Bear show. Sorry about that.
But yeah, I guess you would have
in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
he was in Big Top Pee-wee.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember. Was he like one of the clowns in Big Top Pee-wee?
He was.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. I think that's where he looks familiar to me from.
Yeah. Definitely did a lot of radio in the 40s. So was a writer for radio in the 40s. Very cool.
Yeah.
And what I also love about him is that, you know, we don't know too much about him. We know that he's, you know, a beggar, but also there's a moment where like he's asking for change and George gives him a bunch of coins and he counts it out and sees that it adds up to $1 and gives him a $1 bill back.
Yeah.
So like,
there's something right. So yeah, there's something with this character. I love the build throughout the movie with that character as well. And that, yeah, it's like you see what you see is not necessarily what you're seeing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we could talk all day about UHF.
I mean, let's just before we go, we should also run down the soundtrack, because the soundtrack to this movie also served as a Weird Al album. Like there's songs that are in the movie, like Beverly Hillbillies, Let Me Be Your Hog, the song UHF. You know, we got it all on UHF. But then there
wah 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 doo doo.
Not on the soundtrack.
Not on the soundtrack.
Not on the soundtrack. No.
Still part of the score.
But I remember like this soundtrack was a popular
It works on its own.
Yeah, I'm looking up the track list, and it was one of the first soundtracks that I remember including movie clips because it includes
Spatula City,
Gandhi 2, Spatula City. How have we not talked about Spatula City? They were actually that's
what I'm telling you. I know
they kept that billboard up, and people were looking for Spatula City.
I'm also gonna mention something really quick. The IMDb trivia for this movie is just poorly regurgitated facts that Weird Al mentions on the DVD commentary and gets a lot of things wrong, like misquotes what he says. Like, for example, and we'll get back to Spatula City in a second, but there's something in the IMDb trivia where it says that Sylvester Stallone was approached to be the helicopter pilot at the end of the Rambo sequence. What really happened was he was approached to be the guy who sells tickets for the helicopter, and the IMDb trivia says that he couldn't do it because of a scheduling conflict. But what Weird Al says is, but it didn't work out because maybe he had something better to do that day. Like, he said it in a very joking way, knowing that like this is the height of Sylvester Stallone's career.
Right.
He's not going to be, in this stupid movie.
Yeah. I mean, I was just sitting here thinking like, okay, what would he have been working on? Probably Tango and Cash. Okay.
Yeah. So,
so back to the soundtrack.
Anyway, I would take anything that's on the IMDb trivia, of course, with a grain of salt.
As always. So to go down the track listing of the soundtrack, you've got Money for Nothing, Beverly Hillbillies, Gandhi 2, Attack of the Radioactive Hamsters from Mars.
Right.
A classic, right? Isle Thing, not in the movie, but it's a parody of Tone Loc's Wild Thing.
Tone Loc's Wild Thing.
Yep.
Right.
We've got the aforementioned Hot Rocks Polka. We've got the song UHF. We've got Let Me Be Your Hog, which is in the movie. We've got song parody She Drives Like Crazy, parody of the Fine Young Cannibals. She Drives Me Crazy, a favorite of mine. The Generic Blues, which is basically just Weird Al doing blues. I don't remember that. We've got the Spatula City, the Fun Zone instrumental, which I think is in the movie.
Stanley Spadowski. That's Stanley Spadowski's Clubhouse's theme song.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then And then we've got another favorite of mine getting parodied. We've got Spam, the parody of REM's Stand.
Not in the movie.
And then it ends with another song not in the movie, but just as memorable, The Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota.
Right. Which, I don't know, did I send you this? There's an episode of the podcast. Oh, what was it? 99% Invisible, maybe. That's all about the actual controversies surrounding the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota. There are several competing biggest balls of twine that are, they debate which is the true biggest, because there's one where it's biggest by like dimension. There's one where it's biggest by weight. There's a lot of debate about that.
And I love, that's one of those songs that for some reason I can still remember a lot of it, like, well, I got 2 weeks of vacation time coming after working all year down at Big Roy's heating and plumbing. Not eating and plumbing.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So what I was getting to before is that like we could talk about this all day.
We could.
And if you want to talk to us about UHF, send us an email, ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. There's also our link tree, which is linktr.ee/ruinchildhoods. We'd love to connect with you about this movie. It is one of our favorites.
Yeah, we love this movie.
Yeah. So, Dan, what are we doing next?
Oh, wow. We're going 180 degrees away because next up we're going to be looking at a series that I believe the original might be celebrating its 50th anniversary. We're looking at the Dirty Harry series.
Yeah.
So taking quite a left turn here from UHF and going to Clint Eastwood in the Dirty Harry series, right? Dirty Harry, which was released in 1971. December 23rd, 1971. So coming up on its 50th anniversary, has spawned several sequels, and I think is going to be pretty interesting to look at, especially in the climate, I guess law enforcement climate, not the oppressively hot climate of 2021. So
yeah. Well, Dan, as you are taking the highway exit to go to Spatula City, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.